A young America challenges the greatest empire on Earth, Britain. What follows is chaos, a war few remember, filled with failed invasions, shattered capitals, and a treaty that changed nothing. But today we ask, what if that story ended differently? What if the United States didn't just survive the War of 1812, it won? In this alternate timeline, America does the unthinkable. It defeats Britain on land, rewrites the map of North America, and sets the stage for a global superpower to rise a century early. This is the world where America wins the War of 1812. Chapter 1. The Breaking Point. In our timeline, American forces struggled to gain ground in Canada. But here, that changes. General William Henry Harrison's forces are better supplied and better led. In this timeline, U.S. troops avoid the disastrous defeats at Queenston Heights and Stony Creek. With Napoleon tying up British troops in Europe, reinforcements are delayed. The Americans take Montreal by the summer of 1814. The fall of Montreal is catastrophic for Britain. It severs Upper Canada from Lower Canada and leaves British positions scattered and isolated. Montreal falling is like Washington burning in reverse. It shatters British morale and shows that America can fight a war of conquest, not just defense. Chapter 2. The Treaty of Boston. Instead of a stalemate treaty in Ghent, this war ends in Boston. The Treaty of Boston marks one of the most consequential peace agreements in Western history. With American forces occupying both Upper and Lower Canada, Britain has little choice but to cede territory. Southern Ontario and Quebec are annexed and renamed the Northern Territories. This gives the U.S. strategic access to the Atlantic through the St. Lawrence and drastically expands American influence. The local French-speaking population resists, but under military rule and the gradual expansion of U.S. statehood, the region is slowly absorbed. Cities like Montreal and Toronto are eventually transformed into major American commercial centers. American dominance over both shores of the Great Lakes turns the region into a fortified trade hub. Naval superiority is guaranteed, and cross-border skirmishes vanish. Detroit, Cleveland, and Buffalo become economic titans, channeling goods between East and West. The Great Lakes are no longer borderlands, they're inland American seas. In exchange for a faster peace and to cut their losses, Britain formally relinquishes any claim to the Oregon Territory. The U.S. is now free to expand westward without British obstruction. By the 1830s, American settlers are already pouring into present-day Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, claiming the Pacific Coast decades earlier. Chapter 3. The Early Empire. America's win unleashes a wave of national pride and expansion. Without the wounds of a costly stalemate, the U.S. immediately turns its focus westward. Early victories fuel a belief in manifest destiny. The Louisiana Territory is rapidly settled. Explorers like John C. Fremont are funded years ahead of schedule. California becomes a goal by 1830, not 1850. With the Northern Territories now under U.S. control, infrastructure projects are launched to integrate the new regions. The Erie Canal is completed faster, and railroads stretch into the Midwest and Northern Territories. This boosts internal trade and transforms Montreal into a northern hub for American commerce. The annexation of French-speaking, Catholic, and largely anti-slavery populations adds immediate friction to the national debate over slavery. These new regions vote against slaveholding interests. This shifts the balance in Congress and fuels abolitionist movements earlier than in our timeline, forcing the issue to a head by the 1830s. Chapter 4. The Shadow War. But victory comes with consequences. Britain may have lost on land, but its navy still rules the seas. Britain responds with economic warfare. American ships in the Atlantic face harassment. Trade with Europe becomes dangerous, and insurance rates skyrocket. In response, the U.S. invests heavily in its navy, setting the stage for a new maritime arms race. To destabilize American control, Britain backs local resistance. Armed uprisings erupt in Quebec and Ontario, led by loyalist militias. These rebellions are suppressed but force the U.S. to keep troops stationed in the north indefinitely. Military governors rule with an iron fist, turning the Northern Territories into America's first occupied lands. With Britain weakened, Spain tries to reassert influence in Florida and Cuba. The U.S., viewing this as a threat to its dominance, invades Florida and blockades Havana. Britain secretly provides weapons to Spanish forces, triggering a Cold War-style standoff in the Caribbean that lasts through the 1830s. Chapter 5. The American Century begins early. The loss of Canada deals a psychological blow to Britain. It signals the empire's vulnerability, encouraging unrest in India, South Africa, and Ireland. Overextended and demoralized, the empire retreats from its most volatile colonies, entering a period of managed decline decades ahead of schedule. Already weakened by the Napoleonic Wars, France finds itself boxed out of North America entirely. With Britain destabilized and America ascendant, France avoids further conflict and focuses inward, beginning a cycle of revolutions and political instability that keeps it from rivaling the U.S. overseas. To secure its new global position, the U.S. begins forming naval bases in the Caribbean. Nations like Haiti and the Dominican Republic are brought into America's orbit through debt diplomacy. Hawaii, seen as crucial to Pacific power projection, is annexed by the 1850s, allowing the U.S. to dominate Asia-Pacific trade before Japan even industrializes. Chapter 6. The World We Never Knew. With its territories absorbed into the United States, the Canadian identity never crystallizes. French Canada is slowly assimilated or marginalized. English-speaking loyalists either flee to British islands or integrate. What would have become one of the world's most peaceful nations disappears entirely into American statehood. Without Canada, and with its Caribbean power eroding, Britain ceases to be a Western Hemisphere power. Its navy patrols distant oceans, but America dominates the Atlantic basin. Latin American nations begin aligning with the U.S., fearing its power but needing its trade. Though it maintains its republican ideals, the U.S. now rules over dozens of foreign cultures, extended territories, and naval bases. Its political rhetoric still speaks of liberty, but its actions resemble old-world empire building. The American century begins not in 1945, but in 1850. The War of 1812 is often forgotten. A war with no winner, a footnote to revolution and civil war. But if history had taken just a few different turns, if America had truly won, everything changes. One war, one victory, and the entire world map shifts in America's favor. If you enjoyed this journey through a world that never was, make sure to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. What alternate timeline should we explore next?